Welcome to this conversation on democracy from the historic campus of Washington and Jefferson College. Our guest today is Rosa Clemente, a political commentator, independent journalist, activist, and former vice presidential candidate for the Green Party. Ms. Clemente is with us today as a part of our 7th annual Washington and Jefferson Symposium on Democracy. Rosa, welcome to W&J.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're delighted that you're here, and you had a nice audience today and many good questions for your presentation. And I'd just like for you to summarize a few of the thoughts that you shared with us that I found particularly striking, one of which was your comment that you really didn't discover who you were until you went to college.
Yeah.
Can you just share a little about that journey and what it was that happened in your collegiate experience that gave you this new insight into yourself?
My message was on how you become an activist and organizer, and it's very personal to how people come into this work of organizing grassroots work, you know. So for me, I told a bit of my story because I've had these privileges of, you know, being in higher education institutions where a lot of my family wasn't pursued to go, you know, or they would have never been asked, you know. And I just want students, especially in this time, to not live in fear and to find other people they can connect with around these political issues that are happening. And then, of course, everything happening throughout academia. How do we protect our students? And I think one way is to let them find out who they are. Because once I knew who I was, specifically in a Black Puerto Rican and that, right, like, it was so empowering. I think usually with students that want to know how to do something is because they're ready to do something, and that's what I feel my message is about.
You had mentioned a bit about the challenge of becoming burned out, exhausted from doing the kind of work that you've done in advocating for change, and whatever the cause may be, students that are passionate about things might be at risk of burning themselves out, maybe just through frustration of not being able to effect the change that they envision or would aspire to see. What advice is that for the student who might be thinking about really dedicating themselves wholeheartedly to a cause?
Now at the age, maybe I guess it's 50s, and what that means is I want to spend the rest of my time teaching young people. I want young people to find a professor like me, like I found professors at Cornell, SUNY Albany, and now UMass Amherst. You know, I want to give to them what I got in college that made me have the audacity and like strength to deal with that, and also to be authentic, I think and consistent. But in order to do that, you can't burn out at 23.
Right.
You know.
Well, and at some point you
do.
You recognize that maybe you're becoming one of the elders.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah.
And you're mentoring and you're in that role. You mentioned, in terms of your academic work, that you would rather be a public intellectual than publish in academic publications to be read by other people in your, other scholars in your field. Can you just say a bit more about why that's important?
I read journal entries. I need that like training academic thing, but because I've been an organizer and a scholar activist, me being in academia, again, it's not to write like something that might not be read by a lot of people, because I believe, history is live. And I definitely believe in public history as opposed to the old methodology around history of how you wait and you have to interview certain people and all that. So I think for me, that's been the best part of finishing up the PhD, knowing that I've now found a balance of that academic language along with how I can write my dissertation. I have a little bit more room, which my chair has let me do, and that's been extremely, helpful, But lastly, I also think like people think this is easy because we're having fun, right? We smile, but they should know, no, we're good at what we do for a reason. You're a good president for a reason, And I do believe that there's some times where we have to be like this work is impacting me. Like, I'm having heart palpitations, or why am I sick all the time, or why am I blue or depressed all the time? Well, some of the work we do is, but the rewarding challenges of like seeing a young person begin to change in front of you.
Absolutely.
I think that's who I was with the professors who took me under, and I want to be that for students.
Well, we appreciate you being that for our students today, and for giving of your time and your own energy to be an influence on them and to share your story and your advice as well. So,
I really appreciated coming here because as opposed to getting an email about what I shouldn't say, what is happening, how students are feeling, someone's going to come shut you down if you say this kind of stuff, coming here and having this day, which I didn't know that students have off as well, to dig into that. I think this is what democracy should look like. It should not look like punishment for students or organizations who are fighting for something big and what's happening in its current time, but in general. So like being here and seeing how the students took in the information, because I went to breakfast at 8:30 and they were 15 and they were on point. All women asked me questions. Sometimes I go to these campuses and nobody shows up, and I'll do what I gotta do. But to be in a place where we're talking about democracy, where we're seeing a decline of that and then misinformation, I'm glad that this day is what it is, and I hope I could be on other campuses for this kind of day where everybody comes together and it's like, okay, let's listen. I might not agree, but at least I had a day of being challenged or meeting people.
Well, we are grateful for that feedback. I know I personally am, and we consider this a day off class, but not a day off learning.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of learning, and the students learn a lot from one another as well. As you saw in these breakout sessions, our students have the opportunity to prepare well and then stimulate dialogue among students peer-to-peer in ways that doesn't often happen elsewhere in a traditional structured kind of curriculum. So we think it plays an important role in learning here at the college.
Yeah, I don't, like, the fact that those students ask questions makes me know, like, they're doing something good.
Well, I believe that's true, and I'm glad that you saw that as well while you were here. We've been talking with Rosa Clemente, who is on our campus today as a speaker at the 7th Annual Symposium on Democracy. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.